I have a question for Iona. Is that possible?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how she figured out that air was getting polluted in different industries, how she was able to do those citations, because that's where we are.
This is one of my favorite stories. Now, I worked for the Middlesex County Health Department, and we had 24-hour coverage for emergencies. And back then, we didn't have very fancy equipment, but we had to only respond to a public citizen's complaint. I don't know if you have air pollution inspectors who would actually enforce the laws where you live. Oh dear.
That's the problem.
That's a
the
very
people who
big
we've
problem.
gone to the people who live near those tanks, and they say it's terrible. And the mothers who take their little kids to daycare say it just stinks to high heaven.
Oh, that's horrible. Doesn't your state have a...
Yes, it has a DPA, and we're trying to get them to move and to do things and to do fence line monitoring and things like that, and to put in VRUs and so on to take care of the toxic emissions.
Wow. That's the only role I know, because I was in the factories and we had to do a 360 inspection and check the wind direction over the house of the complainant.
Yeah.
And as soon as we matched that odor, we only had our noses. So I would go out and I would say, is this what you smell? Yeah, we're smelling the same thing. Then I could do a 360 totally around, check the wind direction. Sure, it's going over her house. Then I could walk in the door. Then I went to town.
Yeah.
I had police power. I mean,
awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Awesome.
It was great. And a boss who wanted me to use it. And we took people to court. I mean, we even took Exxon to court in New Jersey. I mean, we were in a very, very horrible part of New Jersey.
Well, you and I will have to talk more about this. We should leave room for other people to ask us questions now.
Okay.
Well, what was your formal job, Iona?
I was an air pollution inspector for the Middlesex County Health Department.
Okay, thank you.
I had to go to school. Remember, if you were listening to us earlier, I had said I went to Rutgers and took public health and environmental law. Now that sounds like I came out a lawyer, but no, it was a very, very intense summer course. And all I got was my sanitarian license, which is not glamorous. They're the people who go into restaurants and look for cockroaches and check temperatures of freezers and hot things. And I said, I don't want to do that. I mean, by then I was already really a hot environmentalist. And I said, I want to do factories. So I got switched over to the city of Patterson. I mean, I could tell so many stories about the disastrous things that I saw and did, but that was because that little sanitarian license gave me police power I could use to enforce laws.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Great.
It's my favorite job of all, and man, I've had so many jobs, I cringe. We've lived, for 30 years, we lived at the poverty level doing our nonprofit grassroots coalition work. And I always had to go find stupid jobs. I mean, even for my first newspaper, I had to work full-time in a sewing factory. And what killed me was it was a military contract, and I sat out in my car, I said, I'm not taking it if it's military. Then I thought, if I got to do my newspaper, I got to work, I got to take this dumb job. I hated it, but I had to do it.
I grew up in New Jersey, and I actually grew up in Homedale, where they had the Garden State Art Center, which I had a corn feed farm on one side of our neighborhood and a gorgeous other regular farm with fruits and vegetables. That my mother was from Iowa, so she befriended the farmer. He just, loved, and we were able to get the best stuff saved because we brought the containers back. But those are both gone, and the Garden State Art Center, as you know, is now called the PNC Center.
I know.
So appropriate for what's happening.
I know. I hate that. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm wondering what your visions are at this time.
Our mission?
My
vision.
vision is
Oh, go ahead, Rachel. Oh, Rachel's not here. Can you hear me? You can hear me? I can tell you what my vision is. My vision is to make government irrelevant. Are you hearing me? Okay. I think that what's happening, like in Rachel's work, where she's taking over the local politics, in Africa, where they're working in their own communities, and like Paul Hawkins says, this grassroots movement is totally going to eventually win out. I don't know what effort it will take. I don't know when it will happen, but it's the grassroots up that I see is going to eventually make global government irrelevant. We don't need them. We can live our life. We can raise our food. We can take care of our kids, our elders. We can just live all by ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, they say the amount of people who are into the whole urban gardening and just the amount of people that are growing veggies in their backyards is just incredible, which is awesome.
Yes, that's what we've got to do. And we don't need to buy all the stuff. We don't need these factories. We don't need these corporations. We don't need the plastic packaging. We don't need a lot of things we think we need.
Right. Well, yeah.
Who's doing the best work around this? Like what communities or models do you see that inspire you around this?
I once tried to start an intentional community that would have been a community land trust where the housing prices are limited to affordable. If you put a certain amount of money into your home, that's all you can make. The housing costs don't skyrocket. And if it's a farming cooperative, which is what I wanted, we would just be growing our own food, taking care of each other, eating together, cooking together, sharing, doing the chores together. I like that model. And my husband always loved Mondragon, a worker-owned cooperative in Spain. He always loved that. As a matter of fact, we started a little sewing cooperative. We had a period where we were trying to play a small role in eliminating sweatshops around the world. So we traveled from Boston to Chicago. We bought an inventory of organic cotton clothing made in the United States. And then we started a little worker-owned cooperative of our own with a handful of stitchers. And we just did that back and forth. We loaded up our Ford Escort with all these clothes and our overnight clothes and hopscotched east to Boston, came home, unpacked, washed the clothes, ordered more, hopscotched west to Chicago. And we just did that for years until we went bankrupt. we couldn't manage. We had good sales, but the travel expenses were too much. And frankly, I was really tired by the end of that.
Iona, this is Howard with the green shirt. Anyway,
Howard.
Anyway, but given what you're talking about, I don't see how that's consistent with the notion that we need no government. I mean, who built the roads that you traveled on? How did the cotton get to Chicago? It's a beautiful vision, being self-sufficient and sustainable. And of course, we know that in the long run, we will be dead if we're not sustainable. I mean, the human species, not us in particular. So that the problem is that we live in a big world, and there are a lot of selfish and nasty people with levers of power that we need to protect ourselves against, and we cannot do that individually. and there are too many of us, as I pointed out in that chat thing there, to manage all of this. So the problem is, given the system we have and the population size that we do, how do we move from there to a future that really is sustainable, which I think is going to be a future that has a lot fewer people, by the way, and that may be done with a lot of pain if nature has her way, which she may, and of course human forces may have their way too, in the form of military actions and migration and failed migration. But it's much bigger than, well, let's just not have government, and I suspect that somewhere between there and the vision which I share, we have to find solutions. I'm not sure what they are.
That's probably why I like Africa so much, at least the people I know there. They're working very, very locally, although they're part of the climate change movement. I mean, they're bringing in the education, but they're a society in general, their cultures in general are less advanced, less rich than we are in general.
I'm going to want to check that on.
So, oh, good. Here's Rachel.
Yeah, yes.
So I think we just need to cut way back. We need to cut so far back. And frankly, I love indigenous people, and they're just being clobbered in the rainforests and everywhere. It's like what happened to our Native Americans here.
Absolutely.
So we need to stand with them and do what we can. And for me, like I said, my focus is going to be the African cultures.
Okay,
And
but
you're right that we have a lot of roads and things that will need to be maintained, but there's a lot of things that we should stop using.
Well, you do know that Africa has some very large cities with skyscrapers and rulers with armies.
Yeah.
And oil fields and pipelines and Chinese companies moving in, buying up land and building infrastructure in part to support the assets that they're developing there, and in part to be partners with the governments that enable them to do what they're doing on the land. So there's a disconnect, I'm afraid, between the vision you present and what we have to deal with.
Yeah, I know.
It's much bigger than this conference. It's much bigger than a small workshop.
I know.
Of course. Yeah,
But that's my ultimate vision.
Okay.
That's where I want to go.
Yes.
I mean, I hold that vision close to my heart. And that I decided my newspaper is going to have a strong focus on love, peace, beauty, compassion.
It does.
Thank you.
It does. I've started reading it. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. I'm sorry I was off for a bit. My power ran out, but I have it back again. I do believe in blessed unrest, and that the fact that there are so many of us, I think that really makes a difference. Sometimes one feels a bit alone and just focuses on one's own space, and a lot is happening.
We can do it. I mean, I'm just convinced we can do it.
Iona, my name is Nightingale, and I just want to come in a little bit. So I came in a little bit late after you had probably talked about your connections in Africa, but I was born and raised in Kenya, and part of my work is in Liberia, in West Africa, and but I am currently living in California at this moment. So I just wanted to touch a little bit. So and my background is I am a nurse by profession, but I've been doing environmental and climate related stuff, which is like very much what I love. So just wanted to touch a little bit about the question you and Howard were talking about a little bit ago. To say, coming from Kenya, which is still a developing country, but when you compare the two countries, with people having a lot of indigenous persons still there, going into the rural and even in the cities, there's a lot of difficulties and a lot of poverty. And I want to especially talk about Liberia, which is where I have been more recently than Kenya, and worked also more recently. That it's very to even talk with the people about keeping their traditions, because they're looking and seeing how difficult it is to even sometimes access the basic needs like the food, because something like where I've mostly recently is a hunter-gatherer type of community historically. But after the Civil War and after Ebola, just so much has changed the population.
I can't hear you. I can't hear
Yeah,
you.
we lost her for a minute.
Oh, okay, sorry. So the infrastructure there is.
Need help. Can't hear you.
Let me type to John.
Yeah,
It looks like she's
we lost her.
raising her hand. Hang on one second. Let's see if I can find out what's going on there. Yeah, she's got her hand raised, but yeah, she's there, but she's frozen, so maybe she just lost her connection. Unfortunately.
Does anyone have her phone number?
I'm trying to type her a chat if she can. I don't know if she can see that.
Yeah. She just disappeared.
Oh, that's a shame. A real African person.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, we lost.
Yeah, I think it's my connection. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
Okay. Okay, apologize. So just looking at the infrastructure, the road infrastructure, I don't know where you guys lost me because it seemed like I was still there. But I was going on to talk about the infrastructure and how not having the roads just disrupts people's lives, and it leads to a lot of difficulties because these people are trading with Ivory Coast and Guinea, and some of the basic foods come from there, basic goods. So just wanting to say that I also really agree with you. Like I've so many times gone back and wished that I could go back to the old ways that my people used to practice, where you just walk to where you want to go and, you know, just live within a small community. But now we're so interconnected that it's almost impossible to imagine going back that way. And so a little thing I would want to add is that the government should be more locally focused, in my opinion, such that, you know, because now what happens is, like, especially in Africa, if you become a leader in the country, you focus on where you come from. That's what we mostly see. So you find more development in some areas and almost no development in other areas. And also for us to reframe what development is. That development will be more like just allowing us to be able to reach each other faster, but still maintain some of the older ways and borrow back from what used to be there with our traditions. So that's just a little bit of that. I would want to see us having a better marriage with government, but still have government.
That's beautiful, Nightingale. Thank you so much. I do think we need local government. I just don't think we need these international governments. But I'm delighted that you are here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we should be open for something new. which will probably be a combination of many of the things we're presently using, but also very much focusing on local issues and connection to our local governments and to our local community. A bit like what Precious was talking about in Africa, that those are connections. And that's what we're working with, is working very locally. Recently, my son sent me something which is called Films for Action. And on that, there are many films that emphasize local food production and local government. I'm just throwing that into the pile.
That's good. Thanks.
I wanted to mention Alfred Brownell, who's speaking on the 9th, and he is a Liberian lawyer. Nightingale, do you know about him? He was
Say the name again.
Alfred Brownell.
Oh, no. I will look him up.
Good. But he's speaking on the 9th, and he's speaking about how they were able to achieve a victory over the palm oil interests who wanted to get to control what is very much a big part of the lungs of Africa. And he does that. He did that over a period of years by working with leaders, tribal leaders all around the country. And they actually united into an organization that had a great deal of power, and it involved defending indigenous rights to the land. But if you go to the WGBH website, where some of our talks are being posted, you can see the announcement for his talk and a map of Liberia that shows you where the palm oil interests were trying to move in, or had already started to move in. But at any rate, in terms of indigenous tribal leadership, I think his talk will very much confirm what Precious has been saying. And it is a combination, to succeed in some respects, of local groups and respecting their knowledge, but also having some very Western knowledge of the legal system and how to pull things together and tackle something as big as a palm oil interest. So that is on the 9th.
Paula, what you've just said is awesome. That is so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, wow.
Yes, Paula, thank you.
Thank you, Paula. I totally agree with that also.
Okay. So
what are some of the things here in our country, or for those of us who are in the States, that you think are like best practices to really navigate towards the vision of where we can exercise as much community power for healthy solutions? You know, a lot of this is about activism that we're hearing today. So do you guys have some things that you've honed when you think about what you might want to share with us to keep in mind for in our own communities?
Steve,
go
ahead,
okay,
Ray.
I'll start a little list. It's grow organic, eat organic, encourage other people to. That's my beginning. You go now, Iona.
Well, Steve, I wanted to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I will try to think about you and how I can answer you specifically.
Okay. I live in Philadelphia.
Oh boy.
I started with some other folks, a lot of different community organizations, you know, like trying to do a neighborhood eco-municipality kind of thing. And it's interesting because being part of something bigger, you know, a neighborhood, you don't have as much control in some way. Maybe that is parallel to cities and states, or cities and federal. But you know, all these things they're change processes. So it's heartening to hear how a few people, you know, can come together and sort of inspire other people to be involved. You know, that it always seems like it takes time to do that. But
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you at all connected to the collectives or community groups in West Philly close to Penn?
Like Movement for New Society?
Yeah, yeah.
I know some of the folks there.
Well, that might be a beginning place. My son has gone to visit them when he travels around.
Yeah, they've had such an impact in the city.
Breakout room.
I mean, that might be a starting place. I don't know.
Maybe a way for me to do it, but I don't know what it is.
Steve, you're already in a group, you said.
Lots of, yeah, a bunch of different groups.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, I'm not in a group right now. I'm here by myself doing a newspaper. So Rachel, you've heard Rachel's talk, and you're involved already. So I guess what I would just say is keep going. And Rachel had a thought too about growing your own food. That's kind of hard to do in Philadelphia, but not impossible. I have a few things I like to spout off about, just general short ideas. Stop shopping, stay home. And I've not verbally said this out loud in a group, but stop making babies.
Mm.
And just share these ideas. I mean, wherever you go, just share what you can share. Make your friends, just make your friends really tight and keep thinking and talking. I gave a talk a long time ago to a high school science class. And at the end of my talk, the teacher asked them to tell us what they learned from me. And one man raised his hand, a young guy, and he said it, the whole thing, think and act, man, think and act. What else can you do?
I agree with you in regards to population, but someone I know when I was growing up, I thought it was a harsh comment, but it's so true. He would say, the wrong people are having too many children. So if we don't have at least 1 or 2 children that we can teach the right way, then there's going to be people that have tons of children that aren't being taught the right way. That's
true, Carol. And also there are a lot of children that aren't even wanted, and that's a tragedy.
Right, because some people's approach is, hey, everybody gets needs to be let out of the starting gate. It's up to them to pull up their bootstraps. I remind them, I was like, you do realize some people don't have boots, let alone bootstraps. If you can help us at least get these people boots and bootstraps, then I'll have more of a conversation with you.
That's fantastic. I love it. Thank you.
Sure.
The other thing is actually to focus more on children and young people, show caring, have a back and forth of you matter.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, that then leads to more responsible behavior, like 2 kids is enough, or perhaps 1. But so many kids are hurt, and they need to know that they're of value. It's one of the things we learned in the shelter for battered women. When there was a child that was constantly getting scolded by her parent, the staff would, well, I would say, let's all treat this child like a treasure and see if we can turn this around. And the women's eyes would open and their mouths would drop. Why are you being so nice to my child?
Wow.
And then they would realize their child was valuable. And then I'd get connections that I haven't forgotten with these kids that were just scruffy and neglected. And the kids loved it.
That's beautiful, Rachel.
And I love the
Welcome.
stories on introducing community gardens and how literally tough gang members will show up like rolling their eyes, and within a few months they're like thriving on, they've been able to see something grow, and it's wonderful to see that.
One of the stories in that film series I mentioned, Growing for Action, is about gardening with prisoners. And it mentions how the prisoners stand up and they walk in a whole different way when they're walking into their garden and seeing all the food they've grown, and they feel like people and they're relating to the earth. So there's paths that we could open. And the coronavirus has made us look more at prisoners. They can't be left there, captured to die.
What's the film again? Series? The film
It's a series and it has an endless amount of interesting movies to look at. It's called Films for Action.
Okay, Films for Action. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Films for Action. Just type it in and look, and you'll find all kinds of things, and you can go to what pleases you, what draws you.
Thank you. Love you guys. I will reconnect with you later.
Thank you, Nightingale.
It's so useful to hear other, how other folks are doing things. So it's valuable to hear, to share our experiences. But this is, just reminds me how useful to hear what's worked in other places, how we can sort of cross-pollinate and with ideas and things like art also.
I'm wanting to turn that around and find out more about what you're doing so that we might learn something from you.
That's sweet. In Philly, it's the poorest of our 10 largest cities.
Yeah, I've lived there.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay.
I worked in North Philly, near Temple.
Oh, so yeah, you know what it's like.
Yes.
But it's also a small town in a way where you can really get to know other folks and have an impact. So one of the things that I find exciting is we're doing a small project of everybody chipping in a little bit of money every year to loan to Black folk entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs who are cultivating local businesses, local green businesses, where they might not otherwise be able to get money from banks. But in a bigger way, we're also giving social capital. So publicizing their businesses, helping them think about how they can succeed. And we're, it's making a difference. So there's starting to be a small sort of ecosystem of sustainable, underrepresented entrepreneurs who are working together.
That's great.
I love that.
Great.
Could I put that in my newspaper?
Oh yeah, we'd love that.
Wonderful. So you got my website, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a beautiful story. Thank you.
And then you can spread it in your newspaper.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, Rachel.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
The thing that I would like to emphasize too is that I am just one of the people in South Portland who's doing this. And there's a very talented group of women that I meet with every week. I actually am not a very educated person, but I've used what I have. And I think collectives are really, really useful. Working in a group on a very consistent basis, it just keeps you going, and it means that all kinds of talents can come together and make things work. And it's much better than being alone.
And just a small group, sometimes really can tip things, like you were saying. That was so inspiring. It almost made me cry when I was hearing your story.
Oh, good. Well,
fantastic.
Yeah. The other thing I didn't get to say was that one of the things that really pushed me forward into that was the dreadful things that are going on in Alberta, and what it's just just email tar sands and have a little look at that. It is totally, totally, totally terrible what's been going on. They have big tailing ponds of toxins. The women that came to speak up to us said they would take their lives if they weren't doing what they were doing. The fish get cancer. The wildlife gets cancer. It's just dreadful what's happening. And I'm glad they're failing. I'm glad that the whole tar sands thing is going down the tube. It's you know, as we know now, the price of oil has just sunk down. So it actually costs money to have oil. So, and the other thing is that Taryn, who I showed the picture of, she went up there and met with them, and then they sent messages to us saying how grateful they were that we were doing that work. And it was, we would always begin to cry when we heard about that, because it was so dreadful. And this is partly why it was so important that we do this, to stop that atrocity that's going on, where the earth is getting plundered and ruined and people's lives and nature is getting spoiled.
Do you think that these kinds of disasters will maybe motivate people to try a different way? Like, I mean,
I'm just hoping that also this situation we're in now, where we're all at our homes, with nothing better to do than think about, where have we gone? Where shall we go? That this will make some difference. I'm really hoping that we don't all just have to rush back into how things were. I'm really hoping that.
in Sweden, they said, some of the people said that after they had a mad cow outbreak, and then also Chernobyl, that it really had an impact on their culture and kind of created a much greater and fertile shift to doing things more sustainably. And a third of their municipalities became more localized, and a third of their municipalities adopted a whole framework for becoming sustainable and focusing on people having the opportunity to meet their needs and designing systemic approaches. So, I mean, it was a sort of magnificent transition because of this. People realized that they were vulnerable to things that happen in their environment in a way that they hadn't realized before.
I hope we can do that here in the US.
I do too. I think there is a bit of shift here. It feels as though people are more caring.
Yes. And, you know, even though I don't have a very busy life, I did have a very busy life, and it's more peaceful, not running around so much. I like it. I hope others feel the same way. It's kind of like a vacation.
Well, in our neighborhood, people are being very friendly and trying to connect to each other, like over the fence, across the street, and so on. And because I and my partner are a bit older, a lot of people offer to get food for us and stuff like that. It's very sweet.
Yeah.
It means they're thinking about other people.
Nice.
And not filling their needs with material stuff that you can't fill materially.
Right.
Well, people are doing crafts, singing, sharing their music. A short time ago, before this started, I was thinking, what kind of society do we want? And that's the question we need to answer. And the first thing that came to my mind was, we need to grow our own food. We need to be more caring. Surely the arts will continue to be a wonderful part of our lives. And I'm just throwing this out. What else do we need? We need health. We need schooling. We need to support our teachers. What else?
Not a whole lot.
Freedom, a sense of identity, you know, some of those sort of more, but those aren't necessarily material things.
No, agency.
Yeah.
Ability to be and to do.
Love, like you said, compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
love for all kinds of people. One of the things I'm doing is staying in touch with somebody that I was visiting and doing art with in a nursing home. When I get on the phone with her, she does not want to let me go. And now they have a phone that gets moved from person to person.
Oh,
I hope they clean them in between, but that means we can access them. The people who are shut up there in the nursing homes.
The number of people who are saying, oh, I guess we really need to be nicer to the people on the front lines. And I'm like, where have you been? I've always been. I bet you a bunch of you all are also very nice. I actually, I was a waitress. I was on customer service. So I actually have people shocked on the phone how nice I am to them. And they're like thanking me towards the end. I'm like, this is sad. Should be just normal behavior, and appreciation.
yes.
And what about the farm workers? Their lives need to be better.
Absolutely. Well, that's it. I get the best response from people. It's like, even if you don't think your food right here has that much pesticide on it, think about the worker that has to be in the midst of it all the time.
Right.
I went to a conference recently that was put on by the pesticide people, the Beyond Pesticides. The most disturbing thing was a witness from a number of young farm workers who said that they were drenched in pesticides every day.
Oh, wow. I would like to take a minute. We have a very nice chat here. If you don't mind, I can read it to you if you can't read it for yourself.
Go
This
for
is
it.
from Maria Ermstrom. Hello, I can't talk because I'm putting kids to bed, but have been listening and appreciate your talks. Obviously, she's overseas somewhere. I have worked on research on movements confronting, wait a minute, it jumped. Oh, shucks, hold on. I think I'm out of here.
What country?
I don't know, but I think I lost everybody.
No, Iona, you're not out. We can still hear you.
I cannot see anything.
Well, I can continue reading. She says,
Oh, good, thank you.
I've worked on research on movements confronting extractivism in South America, Chile,
Good.
Uruguay. Currently active in the transition movement in the Nordics. We are doing a webinar on food resilience with 10 sessions online for free. People here are showing up and loving it, making a stronger network through this crisis. Keep up the good work.
Lovely.
And then she goes on, but is that what
What's
you
her
wanted to-
contact info?
Thank you, Steve.
It's Ralph.
Oh, Ralph, was that you reading?
Yes, it was.
Thank you so much, I'm back.
Good.
Sounds like they're doing very good work.
Also, I might have mentioned, I highly recommend the Citizen's Guide to the Farm Bill. I forget the author last name, like Imhoff, and he supports, in general, he supports what we're for as far as living soil. But it's an excellent way to understand where what is currently in there, so that anything to adjust it will know what the best things are to support. And, fortunately, they have added some healthy soil initiatives, but the percentage is pretty low. But it's awesome where he says that a number of the initiatives have been proven to be successful. So hopefully they can be expanded upon. And one of the key statements he makes is that even though the nutrition, My Plate, where they suggest a much higher percentage of fruits and vegetables, they said that the agricultural farm bill still supports things that it's like two trains running in opposite directions.
Yeah. Within the bill?
Right. But I mean, 2018 did have some changes. One of the key takeaways was how much, while they're trying to focus on the environmental mess that CAFOs end up with, they almost pay for too much of it. So in a sense, they support it continuing instead of passing it on to the CAFOs so that it distracts them. I must say, that's one of the things that, I mean, my heart just breaks for the people affected by it, but it's so showing how these CAFOs are such a horrible setup, and how something like regenerative agriculture, it automatically is more of a social distance type of setup.
My heart breaks for the animals.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, both, absolutely both. But you know,
Here's more from Maria. I think she might be here. I'm not sure. I have a podcast where I document grassroots organizations and people doing the change. Just launched it in English, before in Swedish. And it's 3 W's, worldsinTransitions.com, and she's in Finland. If you can read the chats, she has her email there too.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the biggest, most powerful thing from my experience is just hope from each other.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of practices we could share. I'm sure others on here are, you know, doing things that we would learn from as well. You know, we wouldn't be here otherwise. But it feeds us to hear from each other, like you guys have been doing. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Steve. You're right. Here I am all alone, but I feel like I'm with all my buddies.
We're not alone.
Thank you.
The word help just makes one feel better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Against what's happening, it's really quite strong.
I'm sure you guys, I mean, Joanna Macy always talks about that sort of phase change, right? In her book, that we don't always realize what's going on around us, you know, but there's so much, and when we hear about it, and then all of a sudden maybe we see the results. It just the way water changes to ice, you know, it's moving there, but just because we can't always see it doesn't mean that it's not working that way.
There's a book out that says that even water feels. That's
Yeah.
mind-blowing.
Yes.
It's different. The local is gives us a lot more, like when we think about the shift to local, I mean, it's already happening when we choose to act locally, you know, and take things into our own hands.
And, you know, I think more is happening in the agricultural field than we know. I just read an article. It was about a farmer, and they reckon in this article there are 5,000 farmers are moving in the right direction. That's a lot if you think of these huge farms. I mean, some will be smaller, but some will be big. And a thing that tends to happen is when you get one farmer doing wonderful work, others say, so what's going on there, what you're doing? Because they can see the difference, you know, with the cover crops and stuff, things growing real high.
That's exactly it. We're all like farmers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I'm digging for stories.
That you're going to be planting seeds all over with your story. You already are.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I love it. It's what I love more than anything. I don't like gardening much.
Well, that's okay. You know, as you speak, I find myself wondering about the young black kid that has made himself more and more prominent in doing what he wants to do, that you start off with. I've forgotten his name.
Me?
Yeah, you had a long article about this.
Oh, yes. I don't know which one it is because I do so many of them.
Well, he's the one that basically was pushing for Greta to get nominated. And you got a photograph of them together.
Yes, I know who you mean now.
Yeah,
Oh, he's dynamite. He's in Washington, D.C.
yeah.
Yep. I love the young people. I mean, Rachel, at our age, we really do love young people.
Absolutely. We're beginning to attract more to our group, which is very nice.
Good, good.
And they're so smart.
And they have so much energy. And they're
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And stuff is happening in all the Portland schools too. And they're coming and standing in front of our councils, which just happened, and making the councils commit to working in a greener way. Of course, they have to come back and say, so what you're doing, you know, but it happened in our council meeting. And I just stood there and I said, I'm so glad to be here to hear this.
Yes.
And the council, the whole council, they were obviously very moved at what was going on. It just has to go further.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Are the young people in your areas, are you seeing them involved? Is it through their schools? Is it through Sunrise? Is it on their own? Sunrise
is happening. Yes, Taryn Holweaver is working with them, and they're doing stuff by themselves. And there's this additional, I don't know quite how it all connects, but all the schools now have young people who are working together and making sure that everybody goes to the demonstrations. And they made some big demonstrations happen just by themselves, like 2,000 people, you know, with a few parents tagging along. Yeah, and that makes them feel powerful, and that's good.
I think there's power. I think there's power in hearing someone like Greta Thunberg speaking to adults. There's a tremendous power in hearing the truth.
That's right.
Being spoken to power by someone who to whom you don't normally give power, but of course, anyone who's been a parent knows how powerful young little kids are in our lives as they, from the time they're born.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
We just have to learn to listen to them sometimes.
Yes. That's right.
I have a little story about that. My son, his little one is 6 years old now, and she's a very feisty and wonderful child, very creative. And he cares a lot about trees. There's some awful organizations wanting to build a city next to their wonderful place where they live. And to do that, they want to cut down trees, lots of trees. And he had a story about a magnolia bush that was in full bloom that was being cut down. And he was trying to protest it by himself. And he couldn't. And so he cried. He's about 48. Anyhow, his little girl, they do demonstrations with other people about trees, about saving trees. So he's made a tree, a little one to fit her, and he's made a hole in it. This is out of cardboard, painted. Her little face comes through, and she is then holding through little things, save the trees. So all by herself, she becomes this, what's got to happen. I don't know where she was, but then she must have been with her other grandmother, and she called Jan and said, guess what, on the news? The trees are on the news.
In other words, they won?
Well, for her, that day they did. The trees are on the news.
Neat.
It's not just people, it's the trees. And she had become a tree.
Right.
Yeah. To me, that was touching.
Yeah.
Well, they are why we're doing what we do.
Right.
Well, we're going to see some big changes in our world because of this new way of thinking. And I think for people who were on this virtual conference, I think it was last week or the week before, there was talk about how the new generation of farmers in our country are thinking differently, and particularly the young women, than their parents who will be retiring soon, and they're open to different ways of doing agriculture, where the older generation has some fear of change. So, in so many different places, as we see the electorate change and people moving into, younger people moving into roles of responsibility, that the capacity for very fast change to actualize that, things that you guys and many of us have been working on, you may see it happen. You know, it's so hopeful in that way, even as the clock is ticking.
Right.
That might be something to put in your newspaper, to ask the question, what changes are people looking for?
That's a good idea.
In, you know, so many words, so that you can get lots in.
Yes. Good.
Because
I love that.
one of the things I've done is, as the corona came, it's like, this is new. We have to be open for something we don't know about at this moment, because we don't know it all.
Right.
And so I keep thinking of that. What new things are going to be happening in this present time between everyone?
Right. That's a good thought, Rachel. I am taking a break right now, so I won't be publishing. I'm not planning to publish till October, but I think I'm going to publish again sooner, because after seeing Michael Moore's movie, I'm thinking, who am I to take a break? I mean, I love doing it. I love doing my newspaper. And I think I will probably come out before October. So Steve, when you send me a story, just send it whenever you feel like it, because I don't know exactly when I'll really be back. I had a really bad injury. I fell down the bleachers in December. So I had a lot of physical therapy. I'm doing fine now, but it occurred to me just to take a break and get my nonprofit board better and stronger and write my proposal and do all this background work that I've been putting off. So having said that, I will look forward to your story, Steve, and Rachel, I do like your question, so I can put that in. And even though I think I'm on a break, I'm working on my newspaper behind the scenes every day anyway.
Just something I want to add, and that is, people can, if they want to look up more about what we're doing in South Portland, is to look up protectsouthportland.org. We have a website and it has all kinds of goodies on it. And I think it's fine, Iona, if you take a break. Trees take breaks too.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel.
And things happen in breaks.
Yeah,
That's right. It's a growing time.
right. I'm doing a lot of good work.
Integration.
Yeah, thanks.
One of the best, I don't know if you guys ever saw this magazine called Hope Magazine, which came out of Maine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, it's not published anymore, but it used to be. And it was just stories about hopeful things that people were doing to make a difference in the world.
Wow.
Nice.
It was fantastic. It used to be in the back seat pockets of the airline that went to Maine.
Neat.
So you could imagine the surprise, you know, pull out something from your seat pocket and have it be something that really made a difference.
Wow, I love that. See, I'm taking notes. I don't stop working.
No.
I wonder where one can find it.
In memory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, since it's not, it stopped, but it was great. But I mean, maybe Iona, what you're doing is a little bit like that. They're hopeful stories.
Yes.
And Rachel, what you're doing.
Yes, thank you.
You know, what you guys are.
How long ago was that, Steve?
I think it must have been at least 10 years ago that it stopped.
Like pre-websites?
You know,
yeah, pre-website.
Maybe. It was, I think, my favorite magazine of all time.
You know, Yes Magazine is like that. Somebody put on our chat, Yes Magazine. It's a fabulous one.
Yeah.
Do you know it?
Yeah. I know it. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, and there's great stuff. It gives us, sometimes it's a little bit, I think the thing about Hope was that it was regular people and their stories.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't this sort of way of thinking about what you could do. It was just what people have been doing.
Mhm.
The way you guys are telling, on this, we're seeing each other telling our stories, and that has a whole other way of seeping in, I
Yes.
think.
To me, there's always a difference between going to a demo or doing something. A demo could lead to doing something, but the doing, I think, matters. Dealing with concrete change in a world that's being poisoned is important.
Yes. Yes, and you're doing that, Rachel.
Yeah.
That does happen, but it's going to be easier to get back to it after we escape from our confinements.
Yeah.
Certainly in Concord, Mass, there are activities like that, and although they tend to be pretty locally based. Yeah. But they're there. Not at the moment, but they're there.
It's an amazing opportunity with the spaciousness that, if we're privileged enough to get it, for many of us right now, again, like what that, the resting or the integration, we were just talking about, to, really change our game or connect. I mean, we get to see each other's faces here.
Yes.
And if we were so busy, we might not be here doing this. We were back in many of us, our usual time. So this is, I think a lot is going on here.
That's true. I just had a sudden thought. We've heard from a few people, but I can see there's a Jennifer listening in and a Charlie, and we haven't heard from everybody. Does anybody else want to speak? I mean, I don't know if I can unmute you or what, but wouldn't it be nice to hear from the others?
Thank you.
And then there's mysterious LV or 60.
I'm enjoying listening to
Oh,
everybody.
this should be 55.
Oh, thank you. John, did you put her in for
This
us?
is Charlie. I just came. This is Charlie. I just came from Precious's, and she did a very good job. Very very enlightening.
Oh, good. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm not sure who LV is. But
Gosh,
I had.
I'm so thankful you're here to help.
I've been sitting here quietly. I do. So something I think a lot about is the government, and I'm a firm believer in a really strong government, because I feel like the government is the glue that holds society together. And I think that right now the problem we have is we have a corrupt government. We have a government that doesn't represent the people it's supposed to be representing. It's been co-opted by, I believe, the same people who are also amassing all the wealth in the world.
Yeah.
And,
right.
it's, so I think about it, we're all sitting here, I actually went back to work because I'm a gardener. So I would have been making more sitting home collecting unemployment, which I was on, because gardeners often hit the end of the season, they go on unemployment, they pretend that they're looking for a job, and then they go back, they eventually go back to being a gardener. And, but I left my job, I'm going to try to keep this real short. I left my job in 2017. I worked for Swanee Hunt, who had a organization called Hunt Alternatives. It was global. It was very sort of integrated with the government and policy and things like that. And, and she tried to bring women to the table more, because, we think of the government as dominated by men, white men, and that is changing now. But, here we are. I feel like, we've all been given in this COVID-19 thing. I mean, we can really see the government in action, right? And in action and in inaction. Yeah. And, we've all been given these peanuts, like, though the $600 a week and all this and stuff. you know, in Finland, if you lose your job, you get unemployment, like full salary for a year,
Wow.
right? Because, and I think that a lot of people think of that as like, oh, that's like government at its worst because, you know, people are just going to be lazy and blah, 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 right? But what happens instead is people take the year to actually figure out what they really, really want to do, maybe get some training. And so people in Finland, right, which you all probably know is like voted the happiest place on the planet or whatever, you know, it's, you know, I think that's what I want to see. I want to see, like, right now, corporations pay 20% in taxes. They used to pay like 80%. I think it might even gone like up to 90%. I'm not sure, but they paid most of their money back to the society that allowed them to do what they did, right?
Right.
And so anyways, I guess I'm interested. I'm trying to frame this into a question. Like, don't we need to take our government back really to affect real change?
John, I just wanted to mention that some corporations actually have a negative tax rate.
Right.
They get subsidized.
You know, I sit here, I live in Malden, I have to separate my recycling. So I put the plastic in one thing, I put a paper in the other thing, plastic bags have to go into something else, you know, on and on. And I think of all the effort I put into sort of trying to be a responsible citizen. Meanwhile, I see these large organizations that, you know, my little effort, and I know that all of our efforts together add up, but I don't think they add up, you know, like maybe they're half if we're lucky.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, how do we, I mean, isn't that what we want to do? I guess I'm interested in thoughts. Like, isn't that what we want to do? We want to take our world back. And I'm not just talking about the US, I mean, all around the world, you know, people are misrepresented. And I feel like, and it's what's crazy to me is we're the majority. I think that people who want everyone to be healthy and happy and have a safe life and not be exposed to toxic chemicals and have nutritious food and all this stuff, I think we're the vast majority. And I think I don't understand why we don't have control.
You're right.
I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think there's a lot of positive thinking has been going into the election process, and all those people that didn't make it, they're still going to have effective lives, and they're going to carry on advocating for the stuff they were advocating for. And I am hopeful.
I do have some hope. I do, and mostly I get it from hanging around with folks like you. And, you know, I got involved with Bio for Climate about, you know, back in 2017 or 2016. And it was, the first conference was a real turnaround for me because I was feeling very hopeless when I went to that conference. I literally went to the conference thinking, oh, why not? I'll just go, you know, and I'll just, whatever, hear the choir talking to the choir or whatever. But it was, you know, and I think, you know, this conference, Blessed Unrest, is a great example of that sort of idea, just even bigger, because there are so many people doing so many wonderful things.
Yes.
Yep.
I can see the reusable that involves sterilization really being able to take off, and if we can focus on that, because you know there's going to be pushback going forward, kind of like they unfortunately push back on the single-use bag ban, because but the key thing is, like, there's cafes in Europe that have a central place to drop off the coffee mug that they use, and from the background they'll sterilize, you know, they'll wash the cups and then they'll bring it back to the cafe to use again. So we know that, you know, like Starbucks stopped giving discounts and not allowing us to bring our own reusable. But instead of just focusing on that part of it, focus on encouraging, and I know there's some companies in Boston that have been trying to provide that as a service, you know, again, so if we could focus on, and also like the healthcare workers, they've been coming up with like hydrogen peroxide rooms where they sterilize the masks, so they use them, they're able to use them over again, which is wonderful, instead of, my gosh, I was throwing away. So, you know, try try to compromise with, I don't want to use the word compromise because it's actually an awesome solution. Try to figure out where some people are not going to be on the same page as us. They're going to be so over-focused on the sterilization. So anyways.
Okay, good. Thank you, Carol. John, about your comment about government, I do have to say that having been an enforcement officer for air pollution, if we had a strong government that enforced all the laws, that would move us along quite quickly to solving many of the pollution problems here. But we don't.
Mhm.
Thank you, John, for your comments. It was nice getting to know you a little better.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great hearing you all.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. I'm LV. There's nothing mysterious about me. I was just a little fly on the wall on the other side of the computer. I'm a journalism student in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
And yes, and I'm just from France. And I met Nancy Leewood in my little village in the south of France last summer. And I'm just want to dedicate my work and my future work. I'm working on a podcast, my website, because all I care is the environment and the protection of the biodiversity and fight climate change. So it was very an honor and a privilege for me to hear all those great ideas, insights, conversations, and I took notes. So thank you.
What was your name again?
My name is Laura Villa. Next conference, I will be here tomorrow. I will put my camera and my sound on.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're a journalism student, I would love to talk to you sometime.
Yes, thank you. I took your website.
Good, thank you. Thanks
okay,
a lot.
thank you, everybody.
So you're not 55.
I'm not. I'm 36. I'm a student, but I'm 36.
When I was a student at Rutgers, I was 40.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have time to finish my bachelor's degree.
Super. Good luck.
I think France leads in organic care.
Yeah,
they have a very good tradition of knowing how to care for the soil.
Yes, it's been in the tradition. I feel like the US, I've been here for 15 years, but I feel like definitely here we're late. In France, for me, there's a lot of things that I know just because of my education, just simple recycling, best practices and stuff like that is definitely embedded in the education. So in that sense, it's definitely more forward. But there's a lot of work here, and I'm a student of 36 years old. Like I said, I'm with students that are 20 something, and unfortunately, a lot of this generation in between the younger ones and mine, they are still willing now because it's popular Earth Day and all that. They're willing to do something, but there's still a lot of things they don't know, or still a lot of misconceptions that need to be definitely more communicated in a mass way.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Who else might we be missing? Anybody?
Well, I actually had a quick question for Steve. Steve, I believe you wrote to us early on and said that you heard about us through friends who were in the eco-municipality movement. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Maybe you talked about this before I came into this chat room, but if you haven't, would you say something about what the eco-municipality movement is?
Sure. Well, let's see. There are a bunch of municipalities in the US who have committed to basically adopting a framework where they think systematically about their planning. And so how do you, it's not like either or, it's how do we give people the capacity to meet their needs, and how do we do things that are ecologically sound. And there's a framework that Paul Hawken brought over to the States with Peter Senge called the Natural Step, and that was used as the basis for a lot of what these municipalities in the States did. The municipalities started to do this in Scandinavia. There was a guy over there in a place where in the most hopeless, 25% unemployed place in Sweden, a planner started to implement this, and it started to spread throughout Sweden, as I had mentioned before. And now he's working in Kenya, and the same principles can be applied anywhere. You know, that if we think about, we think about sort of what all humans fundamentally need, and what nature needs, that we can live our lives in a way where we are thoughtful about those things and include all these aspects, and we feel fulfilled, and what nature needs is dealt with. And this can be done on all different levels, from schools to businesses to municipalities. And it's extraordinarily hopeful because it's a bottom-up approach. The woman who lives in Cambridge, who told me about this conference, created the American Planning Association's guidelines for sustainability, and they were based on the same framework. Her name is Sarah James. I don't see her on here right now, but she's a great resource.
What's her name?
Sarah James.
Yeah.
So how do we look this up, what you're talking about? We look up natural steps?
Natural step, yeah. I mean, the latest thing that sort of emerged out of this is something called Future Fit, which gives benchmarks for businesses and organizations to actually determine whether they're acting and moving in a sustainable direction quickly enough. But you could look up natural step.
Hi, Judith. Can I call you back?
I'm just trying to think the best
Okay.
way to see this. Eureka municipalities. There's a sustainable what's it called? Portsmouth. I mean, Wisconsin has a whole series of eco municipalities. And these are all places that don't want to really do stuff with other people. They just want to do it on their own, getting to this sense of localness and taking charge. I'm just trying to think, if you could look online and there's a little bit about the natural step, and there are some books. There's Eco Municipality, what's it called? The Natural Step in Municipalities. There's a great book by this guy, Karl-Heinrich Robert, about the natural step in Sweden, and how this whole movement, the whole country changed in like 10 years.
Wow.
And they're so far ahead of what we're doing in the States. They had such foresight, but they weren't always like that. They had an eye-opening moment in the, I could go on and on about this, but we have our own stories, about how we're thinking about how we meet our human needs and do things that are in harmony with nature. And those are things, that's why I was saying that when we hear each other in our stories, that sort of feeds our actions. It's a fabulous feedback loop.
What was his last name? Karl-Heinrich what?
Karl-Heinrich Robert, HENRIK-ROBERT. And he used the people who practiced the natural step incorporated the work of this person from Chile, who won the Alternative Nobel Prize, where he talked about fundamental human needs. Manfred Max Neef, MAX-NEEF. And Max Neef said, we don't have a pyramid of needs. We have some fundamental needs everybody has. It's like, if you can't have a diet that's deficient in certain vitamins, you're not healthy. You need all of them. So when we think about how we're creating our communities and our workplaces and our businesses, we need all of these human needs to be thought about and to be planned in. you know, I think it's sort of, it's not idealistic, it's fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, I think you ought to do a workshop next time.
That's what I think too. You've been appointed by this workshop, this little meet.
Uh-huh.
By the authority duly invested in us.
That's right.
By the Blessed Unresters.
In our little chat group.
Oh, go take a rest.
What
I
you
second the
just
motion.
What you just alluded to is awesome.
It is neat.
I'm going to dig, start looking.
Great.
I would like to do a little show and tell. Remember I said I taught first grade? Now, I don't know if you can see me, but when I worked for the DEP in Trenton, we all got electric pencil sharpeners. I was horrified. So I have a really cheap pencil sharpener from Staples. And actually, I like to use pencils a lot. So that is the kind of thing I like to talk about. You know, just remember me as a hand-cranked pencil sharpener and a needle and thread.
We'll do that.
You're a crank.
Yeah. I like that.
Uh-huh. But not threadbare.
What, Paula?
But not threadbare.
Oh, yeah, right. Thank you.
Well.
So are we finished here? I mean, I just came out of the sky, so I don't know what's going on. I don't want to interrupt. On the other hand, it is after 3.
I would say we're good. What about you, Rachel?
I'm done. And this was awesome. This was wonderful.
It was really fun. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you much, everybody.
Yes.
Great to be together.
Yes.
We have to hear more from you.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything from you, Steve, except for a few emails. So I guess I want to hear about what I want to hear about.
You missed a lot.
He's been nominated to do a workshop next time.
So I gather.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
It's great. Thanks, guys.
Fine with me.
Thank you.
All right.
So have a great rest of the day.
Okay.
Yes. And
Till next weekend, right?
Till next Saturday, yes.
when everything has changed.
Right.
Take care, all.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.